What's up, everybody? Here we are again with the Energy is Love podcast. As always, we're going to start off with our sponsors. We'd like to thank Crystal Water Float Spa, located out in Tooele, Utah. If you guys haven't learned about floating yet, now's the time. It's really one of those things that it's hard to describe. It's hard to explain necessarily, even though it's self-explanatory. You lay back in a tank full of salt water, for hell's sakes. But it's an amazing experience. You really have to try it for yourself. So now's the time to get in there and give it a shot. You can find Crystal Water on Facebook at Crystal Water Float Spa. They also have a website that you can go to and learn more about floating, crystalwaterfloat.com. Go look it up, go research it, find out what you need to find out, lay back in that tank, disappear, float away. It's going to be an amazing experience for you. We also need to thank the Bry Man handling all your small business needs for the past 10 years. As always, we're looking for more sponsors. If you're interested, contact us at energyislovepodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook, Energy is Love Podcast. If you're liking the podcast, if you're enjoying these episodes that we're doing and learning about all these different people, now's a great time to get on board and become a sponsor so you can get your name out there. If you're just digging what we're doing and you want to donate some money, we're down with that as well. Feel free to go find us on GoFundMe. We've got a link to it on our Facebook page. You can also just go to the GoFundMe website and search out Energy is Love. That's our campaign. And donate. Give us that cash so that we can keep spreading the love and talking to the people that we're talking to and doing what we're doing. My guest today on the show is Michael Ingleby. I know Michael from all the different events and fairs that we participate together at. We're always working at those fairs. So it was a really unique opportunity for me to sit down and learn more about him. Michael's a spiritualist and he's a healer. He's just an all-around kind of awesome guy. He does a whole bunch of different really amazing things when he works with clients. He's psychometry and palm reading, tarot reading. He incorporates a lot of intuitive abilities that he has. He's a shaman in a sense. I learned something. Well, I didn't just learn one thing. I learned quite a few things talking with Michael today. And his mom did the same thing that he's doing, his grandmother. So he's a really amazing guy, and I loved sitting down and chatting with him. So thanks for listening to the Energy is Love podcast. Here we go. Energy is Love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is Love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Podcast for the universe. Energy is Love.
That's perfect.
Hey, my guest today on the podcast is Michael Ingleby. That's how you pronounce your last name, right?
That's right, yeah.
Cool. Well, Michael, I appreciate you taking the time to come sit down with me. I've been super excited to talk to you.
So thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
I've been excited. Yeah.
The cool thing is we've known each other for a while, but it's always just when we're doing all those fairs and we'll hook up for that time period and everything like that. But the reason I was excited to talk to you is because the reality is I don't know that much about you.
Yeah, it's difficult when we're in the middle of work to really sit down and kind of have a conversation. So this is nice. This is a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So where would you like to start?
I guess maybe a good place to start would be just to give you a little more information about me.
Perfect.
So again, Michael Ingleby. I'm a professional psychic and shamanic practitioner. I'm kind of headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I work kind of the areas around. And I basically just kind of day to day. This is kind of the day job for me. So I go around, I offer intuitive readings, card readings, palm readings, several other types of oracle systems. And then I do a variety of energetic healing modalities and really adhere to a lot of, shamanic traditions. Over the course of my life, I've been fortunate enough to study with a couple of Lakota medicine men.
Nice.
And also have some familiarity with some Kalahari Bushmen shamanic tradition, and then I use that based on my tradition of origin, I guess, if you will. I am actually your stereotypical Gypsy fortune teller. That's actually my heritage. I actually am Gypsy. Only we don't use the word Gypsy; we say Roma.
Roma.
In our culture, Gypsy is not a nice word. So so Roma medicine man, or a Shuvano. That's actually the language, or the word in that language is Shuvano.
What language is it?
The language is called Romanes, and it's just the language that has kind of evolved as Roma people have kind of moved throughout the world. If you want to go all the way back way back, like, hundreds of years, Roma people actually originated in Southeast Asia. But since then they kind of moved all over Europe, but now they're in America. They're all over the place. And the language, as they've moved to different areas, has obviously evolved, and we take on the new language in the area that we go into. But we always kind of keep this this remnant, this bit of the original language. So it's kind of like Spanglish maybe, where we run around and it's like it's half English, but every once in a while that we'll throw a word in there and people are like, what are you talking about? Yeah. But yeah, so in that language, or in the original language, yeah, my title would be Shuvano, which is our word for shaman, basically.
Super cool. And that's how you grew up. Like that's where.
Yeah. I'm really fortunate. And I talk to a lot of people who do the kind of work that we do. And there's always this point in the conversation we get to where people have to relate this story about how they had to turn away from their past, how they were raised. Most of them are raised with some really like traditional, more traditional religious background, or families that were maybe more conservative for other reasons. And they get to a point where they kind of hit that, like, this isn't what's right for me. I need to do something else. And then they begin to that path to find that other spiritual course, what's right for them and what they need to do.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a process for them. And it's a good thing because it gives them the ability to really, like I said, kind of recreate themselves. They really are able to kind of really claim themselves at that point. But I get to that point in those conversations that I'm kind of like, I don't really have a way to relate to that. Like, cause I'm very, like I tell people every time, I'm very, very lucky. I was born into a family where, this was normal. My mother did this work and her mother did this work and even beyond that. So, I grew up in a household where we did this. If somebody got sick, there was energetic healing that was done. And if somebody had a question on life, somebody busted out a deck of tarot cards, and this was normal.
That's so normal. Awesome.
Yeah.
I've often wondered because, I've got 4 kids and my wife and everything, and we have come into this realm of spirituality and energy and all that kind of stuff. Later in life, obviously, we weren't brought up in it. We weren't raised in it. We had that whole experience of where we kind of had to embrace it and not turn away, but, evolve out of our mindset and everything like that. But I've always thought about what it would be like to raise a kid up in this. What would it be like? Do you know what I mean? From a from birth, even before birth, to raise them in it. So that's super cool. Yeah. Like I can't even imagine now. My brain's just racing with all these different things so you said your mom basically did the same thing and your grandmother, and what about the rest of your family? So,
well, it's interesting. And again, it's a cultural thing, but in my family, it's really primarily women. Women are primarily, and again, it's a cultural thing. Traditionally, women are really the ones who really do this kind of work. So in terms of family, it really, prior to my generation, it was really just women. So my mother and her sisters, she had 4 sisters, and they all did similar things. And their children now have also gone on to do, a couple of them have gone on to do something similar. But I think I'm the most on the fringe, I think, as it is with the work that I do. The others, at least the cousins I have, they've all gone more in the lines of like licensed massage therapists or things that are a little less on the edge for a lot of people, a little more accepted. And then I have just sisters. I have 3 sisters, and again, we were all raised with the same stuff. But as my sisters have gotten older, they've kind of turned away from this more and more. They still believe, and they still will participate within the family. But in terms of actually providing this work for people outside of the family, none of them really do that at this point in their lives. Yeah, and that's okay because we all need to kind of figure out how we fit with those things.
Have you always done this? Has this always been the direction that you've gone? Or, did you ever spend a time period where you had a regular 9-to-5 job, worked in an office or anything like that?
Yeah, I did actually. I was raised in this family where this was normal. And I think I got to a point in my early 20s, and I think that when we get to that age, we all kind of go through a phase. And mine at that point was because this is what I knew. This is what was normal for me. I think I was looking for a way to reinvent myself, to try to strike out on my own and become my own person. And so the way I went about that is to really kind of step away from this for a while. And I spent 10 years of my life, roughly from the age of like 20 through like late 20s, somewhere around that time frame, working in corporate America. I actually did take the 9-to-5 job and actually found myself working for a major corporation, and I was doing corporate accounting work.
Really?
And it was, and the work itself was not bad. The company was an okay company to work for. I did not hate my job. It was okay. But was always just a job. There was never really any feeling in me like, this is my path. This is really what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And at the time that I took that job, even my family, my mother, I remember the time she was just horrified. She was like, I can't believe you're going to turn away from, like, you're walking away from what you're, this is your destiny. This is what you're supposed to be. And, and obviously again, at that age, you're not hearing any of that. So I
did you grow up with that where it was, you have people that grow up and their parents from a very early age have a very specific plan laid out. They're going to be a doctor. They're going to be a lawyer. Was that your plan?
Yeah. The plan was always for me to really kind of become what I am today, at least in the eyes of elders in the family. That was really like, this was always just expected. And maybe that was one of the things that kind of fueled that rebellion in me in my 20s. I'm like, maybe this isn't what I want to do, but there was always this expectation. And again, that is, specific to my family, I think, with our personal spiritual tradition, but also it's definitely a cultural thing. I think that, you're in a sense always kind of expected to carry on the legacy of whatever the people before you have been doing or have brought, how they spent their lives. Yours is always supposed to be kind of the next step, what builds on that. Yeah. So to turn away from this was, a bit of a problem for the family. But I had my fun in corporate America, if you want to call it that. And, and now I'm back. I got to the point where I realized that the person I had become and the life that I was trying to live, because I can't really call it living, the life I was trying to live, for those years, was just not, it wasn't authentic. There was no integrity in that life. And there was and it was not something that really was right for me. I never really felt that I belonged. It was, I got up, I put on a mask and I went and I did this thing. And then at the end of the day, I was able to go home and really be me again. And I just don't think that's a good way for anybody to really be. Yeah. Or live, so.
So many people do.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a symptom of our culture or, societal expectation, these kinds of things. We have these really clear-cut ideas of what is and isn't appropriate, in terms of work that we do, ways that we can contribute, what we need to do to create the life we want to have in terms of maybe material that we need to own, or the connections that we need to make, or even the way that we're perceived, in terms of worldly status or power. Yeah. But that's all illusion. It's all Maya, whatever you want to call it. None of it's really real.
So how long ago did you leave that corporate America?
That's been, I want to say it's probably been about 8 years ago that I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I got to go back to my roots to rediscover what was real.
And you've just been doing that since then?
Doing this? That's been it. Yeah. Since then, I've just been providing these services, and, I didn't really know what stepping back into this kind of work would really be. But it's been an adventure. It's been fun. And I'll admit, I've had the opportunity to do things, to experience things in the process of this work that you're never going to have if you're working the 9-to-5 job, so it's, there are times where it's scary and you're not quite sure what may happen next. But in a sense, it's also very, freeing and empowering to be able to do this. And at the end of the day, I can go home and I can say, I did something today that really, benefited someone else. Yeah. Like I was really able to give back or contribute in some way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, that's what it's, that's the cool thing. We do those events and we do those things. And even if if you're seeing clients and things like that, not everybody's going to resonate and connect with everything that you tell them and everything that you work through them with. But for me, it's like, if it's that one person, like if we do a fair and I see, 5-10 people or something like that, and 8 out of the 10 of them didn't really connect and resonate, but that one person really did. And that's incredibly rewarding. Yeah. I love that aspect of it. So I'm still kind of blown away. I think that's the coolest thing, that you just got the opportunity to grow up and be, like you said, if somebody got sick, there was energy healing that took place. And
energy healing. To this day, my mother, everyone, the generation prior to my mother's, everyone's gone. Now everyone's moved on. So in our family, someone has to step up in each generation and become the kind of the matron or the patron of the family. And my mother's the last of her generation, so she kind of really didn't have much choice. But she's fine. She's happy with it. But to this day, she is kind of like the hub for the family. And anytime anything goes wrong, people go to her. And in terms of healing and things like that, she still has like what we always call it, the apothecary. It was always like herbal medicine, and and she'd make these poultices and these things with plants and smear stuff on your face to help with the fever, and like stuff like this. So it was very much one of these like just very kind of just close to the earth, all natural, herbal, holistic kinds of things. And yeah.
Was there a time period when you were a kid or a teenager where you thought, oh, this is all bullshit and I'm not gonna, or were you always very, very much comfortable with it and just because it was normal?
I was gonna say, I think when you grow up with that, there was never a moment where I looked at any of that and thought like there's no truth to this or this is bullshit. I never really thought that ever. I think that again, a lot of that comes down to not just what is familiar, what is comfortable, but also kind of where you're at, even like on a soul level, I think, because I think if you're somebody who is just by your nature more inclined to be a little more spiritual, a little more metaphysical, there's a more of an openness around those kinds of things. And so I never really had a moment where I thought like this is, there's no truth to this. This isn't real. It was okay. I think if I were to look at the one challenge, the one thing that came of growing up like that was always being like I have one sister. The others are quite a bit older, so they didn't, when they were going through this, I was too young to understand. But when I got to that point where I wanted to be able to go outside and play with the other neighborhood kids. Yeah. And none of the other neighborhood kids on the street were allowed to play with us. We didn't go to the right kind of church, and we dressed differently, and so I think that's probably got to be the only challenge I really, really could connect to, in terms of like I would say like anything was bullshit about that. That was it. It was the being kind of feeling like on the outside and feeling kind of that lack of acceptance. From the masses, whatever. Yeah. But I think that once you move beyond that phase, I think you get to a point of clarity, a point of realization where you realize that having grown up with something like that actually can be empowering again, in a sense. I think it really gives you the ability to see through again some of the illusion behind some of the expectation and some of the societal pressure and things. Yeah. It's like, if you kind of live on the fringe, you become that, and then you kind of become something else beyond that. And so it was a good thing. But in terms of within the house, like, no, everything that happened, the way we handled things, the holidays we celebrated, these kinds of things, that was all normal. That was all just normal. This is just how people live. Yeah. And that was another thing I think that I experienced when I got to a certain point, when I started to really connect with people in a more mature adult way, I started to realize like, wow, people like didn't have this experience as a child. Like they didn't grow up in a house where they did this kind of stuff, and that was almost like there was like this moment of sadness in me, like these poor people missed out. But that really isn't the case at all. I mean, that's that was their path. That was where they were at. And it's okay. It's all good.
That's super cool. So you mentioned earlier about you've had a chance to learn or practice with Lakota. Tell me about that.
So years ago, it was the strangest thing. I went to my again. I have to blame my mother for this, because
don't blame her.
So, I'll give her credit. I'll give her credit for this, because of the just being spiritually different and eclectic. She years ago when I was very young took me to. I honestly don't know if you could call it a conference or a seminar or I don't know, like some sort of workshop, something. Anyway, but we were meeting with a shamanic practitioner. And the whole point of that experience, and it was like all weekend, we just went. And this is one of the things I think that gives people who are non-indigenous people or non-native people who lack that tribal connection and don't have that kind of ancestry. This is one of these experiences that people really kind of seek out. Was to go and actually go through the process of doing like shamanic work, actually shamanic journey, these kinds of things, and really, really going through some of those ceremonies. And so we went and we did that. And through the course of the ceremony, through the weekend, there was one gentleman there in particular who just as soon as I walked in, this guy just locked eyes with me, and he just stared at me, like through me through almost the entire course of the weekend. And then I think we were on the last day, and everybody was getting ready to return home. And he came up, he actually approached my mother first because I was very young at that point. And he told my mother that I had, and this was never really explained to me fully, but he told my mother that I had the signs and I felt the way that young men in his tribe would feel, or the signs they would exhibit when they were shown to be, they call it touched, like they were supposed to become the next generation of healer, or the next generation of medicine man. And that I had this energy about me. And he asked my mother, he's very young, but would he be interested, and would you be okay maybe if he were to try to learn or to study some of this? And my mother was, of course, like, she immediately volunteered. She's like, "Oh yes, you just tell me when." And then I think she realized, like, "Oh, I should probably talk to him first." So then she got the contact information for this guy, this medicine man, and then on the ride home, she kind of sprung this on me in the car.
How old were you?
So I think I must have been like maybe 13, maybe. So we talked about it in the car, and she kind of just laid this out, and it sounded like, initially it sounded like, oh, this will just be like a really prolonged camping trip where, we'll just be like, we're going to study nature and talk to trees and things. And none of that was weird because I grew up with all that. Yeah. But, and so initially I was like, oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. Why not? And so that kind of became the course of this, like this study, this, with working with him. And again, a lot of it was, initiatory processes and these kinds of things. And I've got to admit, he was a medicine man, but he was very honest up front. He told me, he said, I can teach you certain things, but because you are not actually tribe, I can't really give you all of our information. I can't really give you everything, but I want you to learn these things, and these things will be enough to enable you to do this and to carry on this particular type of work or this aspect or part of our tradition. So because of that, I don't really, to this day, I don't really consider myself a shaman. I really don't use the term shaman. And I'm very sensitive about that because I see that word being used a lot by people. My question is always, what's your tradition? How are you initiated? Where how are you connected to this culture and this heritage? Anyway, but that's a whole other topic. But anyway, but I studied with this guy, and it was very powerful, and he taught me, shamanic methods for, like healing and again, shamanic journey work, and working with ancestral spirits and totems and these kinds of things,
How long did you work with him?
I studied with him for about 2 years, and in the process of the 2 years had to really kind of walk away from life, like regular life, for a while. And so I ended up as sort of like, I quit school, like, again, and I may be like 14 at the time. So I quit regular school. I actually had to go back and get my GED years later because I walked away from school to be able to pursue this. But it was one of those things, there was this urgency in me. Like once I became involved and saw what this would really be, like there was this, I have to do this. If I don't, like, this is the only opportunity I'll ever have to do this. And so I have to. And so everything else kind of fell to the wayside, and and I pursued this, and through that process, a lot of it was just the ceremonial work and becoming more familiar and in touch with different aspects of perception and the belief in different aspects of or levels of reality, even different worlds. You talk about the astral plane or the underworld or these kinds of things, or the inner world, connection to nature and animal spirits and even ancestral spirits and these kinds of things. And initiatory processes, you go through things like I can remember actually going through a process where it was like, I had to be buried in the ground. Like I had to, in the form of a ritual, like to actually go through the process of being like put into the earth and then covered, like you were actually being buried. But the purpose of this was to cut you off from anything that would distract. It was really kind of a very primitive sense of like sensory deprivation, and being in that space and just being covered. And and you've
were
got
you
this, in
anything, or were you?
No. They put they wrap you in a blanket so you don't get cold, and they put you in the ground, and then they just cover you, and you can breathe. There's open over your mouth so you're able to breathe, but then having to be in that space for hours. And just, and in the process, the idea, the belief behind that was, just being in a position where you were just in complete connection with the earth, with the world spirit. And being
Do you remember that experience really well?
I do. Actually, yeah. I think, that was one of those experiences. I think you're always going to remember somebody burying you in the ground. Yeah. I was like one of those in the moment. It was one of those like, this is happening. Wow. Okay. I'm going to let this person put me in the ground. And that's, in effect, that's what it was. It was like a shallow grave in the middle of the wilderness. I'm like, oh God, hopefully he,
comes back.
Hopefully nothing bad happens to him and I'm stuck here.
That's crazy.
But then being in that situation, and that was just one example of one of the processes that a lot of those shamanic traditions will use to really they have to kind of break you. They have to kind of take you out of what has become normal, what has become accepted day to day life, and really, in a sense, kind of remove that from you, and then
reconnect you back.
And then instill that connection, put you back into like, this is what's real. This is how this really needs to work. So it was basically a couple of years of stuff like that.
That's a huge thing. My guess is obviously that was a big, huge shaping moment in your life. That 2 years, that experience.
Yeah,
that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was able to have an experience with that by going through that I think at least your average middle American white man is probably never going to be able to experience. And so I'm very fortunate, and I'm thankful every day that I do this work and I have the opportunity to utilize that knowledge or do something with that shamanic tradition. I just kind of say like a little thank you, a little prayer to whoever, and then the medicine man I worked with, he's moved on at this point. He's no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago. Did you grow
up here in Utah?
So I did. I am native to Utah. Yeah.
And that would have been really difficult. I can imagine that house on the street with all the gypsies.
So yes, the gypsy. We didn't hear the word gypsy too much. What we heard a lot was witch. We were the witch family on the street. And it would make perfect sense. We were out in the backyard at night, around a bonfire doing heavens knows what. We were the heathen family, and things get out. You go to school and things happen in school. You have conversations with kids in school, and you're trying to relate, and you're providing a story on how this would happen in your home, and kids get this idea, this perception like, wow, things run really differently in your family. Your house is a little strange, and that, I think, is how that kind of starts. The word gets out, and pretty soon, you're like, you're the odd family on the streets, so, yeah. But again, like I said, it's okay. Yeah.
Did you have a big family?
The family, in terms of like size, we did have a big family. Again, everybody prior to my mother's generation has moved on. They've all passed away. So, but yeah, the family actually is actually kind of quite large, even to this day, but more distant now. Like my mother's family, our kind of our branch of the family, if you will, is we're the only ones here in this area. Everybody else is back east still, and that's where my mother came from originally, was back east. So yeah, but we have cousins and all kinds of family back east, there's communication, we all talk, but in terms of like being able to see each other regularly, that doesn't really happen too much. Yeah.
Is your mom still practicing? Is your mom still working in this field? Is your mom still doing stuff?
She is practicing, but she is less inclined to go out and do this work for other people now. She still has people will come to her. But I think a lot of that has probably more to do with her age. She's at a point now where she's just old enough. She's like, I'm tired. If I have time in my day to spend, I want to do it on these things instead.
Yeah.
But she will still have people come to her. She's got like people who have known her for years and years, or even people like there has been on a couple of occasions somebody I've met that has needed some kind of work or help. And you get, I think we all do. I'm sure you've had this too, where someone will approach you and you're in the position to serve this person in whatever way based on the work that we do. But you get that feeling, whatever you want to call it, a gut instinct or a message from a guide, however it comes through, but you get that feeling like, I can see you need this help, but I'm probably not the person for you. Yeah. Like there's probably somebody else that would be the better fit.
Yeah.
And there have been a couple of people over the years where I've told them, I'm like, I can see that you would really need this work, but I'm going to send you here instead, you know? And so there have been a couple of people that I actually referred to my mother over the years, and they've gone to her, and she's done what she does, and it's worked. It's been good.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
So you read palms.
Mm-hmm.
I've never talked to you about that. I've never, you know, what's funny is, like you said, we get busy when we do those events and those fairs and everything like that, and we just don't get the opportunity to chat or anything like that. But tell me about that. I'm assuming that's probably something that you grew up with. That's something that you were taught, something that you learned throughout your life.
Yeah. The palm reading is really interesting, and I love the palm reading because it's actually really pretty simple and basic. A lot of people look at something like that and they think, oh, it's so esoteric, or there's so much mystery around this. And it's like, no, it's just your hand, you know? And so I always kind of have to laugh a little bit. But it's actually, it's really cool. It's been around forever. Palm reading, or chiromancy has been around forever. Ancient practice. You know, and again, originated, I believe, back in Eastern Asia, you know, probably a good couple thousand years ago. I think they actually have found record of palmistry in like the Vedic scripts. Like it goes that far back.
Yeah.
And then what we use of palmistry today, or what we know of palmistry today, actually is rooted in ancient Greece and their practice of palm reading. And so, but in terms of my own history, that was something that was just another one of these things that we did. We grew up in this house where we all learned to read cards. We all learned to read palms. And in my family, at least, there was never this expectation, or it was never like, you have to learn these things, you know, so that you can go on and do these professionally. That was never it. These things were always something that we learned, because it was just another part of like our spiritual practice, I guess, in some sense. It was like, you know, some people pray, we read palms, you know, it was kind of on that level. It was just one of these, like, you know, you do this with this, whatever you will. But this is good knowledge to have.
Yeah.
You know, and so, so learn to read palms. And now I offer that as a service to other people, and people really love that. Like, a lot of people have never really had the experience of something like that. And again, it's so easy. It's all right there. It's your hand. It's all right there. It's just a matter of just kind of identifying what these certain things will mean, you know. I was
going to say, like, what's the basis for it? Is it interpreting, or is it, 'cause, you know, when you use cards, for example, or you're doing card readings or something like that, yes, specific cards have specific meaning and things like that, but there's times obviously where you'll get information associated with that card for that specific person. Is it the same type of thing, or is it more like when you're reading a palm, it's pretty defined that if they have this or if they have that, it means this or it means that? Or are you also intuitively collecting information?
It's a mix of both. You know, and I read cards in the same way. I think that you're absolutely right. Usually, you know, whether it's tarot cards or some other sort of oracular system, they'll have some sort of, the cards all have kind of a set meaning, but I think that that really is what distinguishes a reader from a psychic. Is, you know, if you're going to sit and you're going to read, like, okay, I know this means this because this is what the book that came with it says, then you're a reader. And that's okay if there's nothing wrong with that. But to bring in that intuition, that side as well, and to sometimes as a result go against the textbook meaning to those symbols. Yeah, that's I think what makes the difference between a reader and a psychic. Yeah. So whether it's card reading or again whether it's the palm reading, I definitely bring in that intuitive. You really have to do that. You have to bring that in. You know, that's really what we do. So in reading someone's palm, you know, you'll have certain areas of the palm, you know, everybody knows their lines. Everybody knows you have a lifeline, you have a heart line, you have a head line, you have these things. And even the meanings for your fingers, you know, your fingers will all relate to certain aspects of life. But you can't get too caught up on the form and the structure. You have to bring in some of the sight, the vision, and the intuition as well. So it's a good mix of both. And I think really, if we're doing the work that you and I do, it has to really be both. There has to be kind of that middle ground. Yeah. And it speaks to the people who come to us in different ways also, I think, because there are people who will come who they're more logic oriented. They're more analytical in their thought process. And they'll sit down and they'll say, I just need the meanings of these things. Yeah. And then they walk away and they're happy with that. And there are other people who really come and they're really, they need to see some magic. They really need to see, like, I need to know that you've channeled something, or I need to know that there's been some real psychic something happening there. And those are the people you give them what they need. You give them like, okay, this is real. You know? Yeah.
You're a super interesting guy. This is exciting. I want to ask you, because due to the fact that you've been in like, I mean, due to the fact that this is just your life, like I said, it's not something that you've been in, this is just your life. How have you seen, because you see a lot of different things out there when you talk to people or you're online or whatever the case may be, and this whole concept and idea of like the shift in energy and in the universe and the way things are changing. So like practicing energy work, 20 years ago or 30 years ago or something like that is far different than it is now, not just because of the way society has changed, but the mere fact of working with energy now is different than it has been in the past. Have you seen that? Have you experienced that in a sense?
I can definitely relate some experiences with that. Yeah, I can say, yeah, I've seen that. And, you, depending on who you talk, you could talk to 100 different people in our line of work and outside what we do. And each one of those people will give you a different explanation as to why they believe or why they feel that has taken place. And in truth, they're probably all right to some extent.
Yeah.
I know that if I look at that, I will say that, yeah, if you want to look at just the time difference that we would see, it's absolutely different working on people on a spiritual, metaphysical level today than it was even 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that really relates to the openness that we find in people now more and more. Like this is becoming something, people always say like this is something that we're becoming aware of. And I don't really think that's it at all. I think that we're becoming or we're reawakening to a lot of this, because if you go way back, not even that way back, even just within the last couple of 100 years, people needed help. People needed somebody to go to discuss problems or healing or something along those lines. You went to the tribal shaman, you went to the village witch, you went to these people who did these things, who were just a little more connected in some way. And they would facilitate that. They would do that for you. So, and then we kind of lost our connection with some of that. I think we lost that. But we're reclaiming that now, as a race, as a consciousness, we're wakening up to that more and more. I think now, it's becoming real again. And so,
do you think it has to do like, people, like it doesn't matter, like you said, it doesn't matter what you call it, like whether we want to think of it as people are waking up or people are being more connected, or do you think it has more to do with the energy of the universe and the way that it is evolving and changing that is now triggering things in people? Or is it just the mere fact that now we have social media and we have the ability to put all this stuff out here more, and so that, you know what I mean, that's more just visibility for this stuff that draw people in? What do you think it is?
Well, I think, if you want my personal opinion, I'm just my personal belief on that. You're like, of course, that's why you're here today.
Yeah.
If my personal belief on that is, and maybe it's more of a Taoist or maybe more of more of a metaphysical kind of a mindset. But when I look at things like that, and I look at my personal belief and everything that I've studied and learned over the years is that the universe is really just the universe is our perception of reality. The universe is really all encompassing, but I really, on a personal level, I believe that the universe is really simply just a manifestation of higher consciousness. And I think that all of us are higher consciousness. I think that we all encompass that. That's us. And so I see it kind of work back and forth. We want to talk about how universal energy is changing and how, and as a result, that's changing us. But I also see that working the other way. I see people waking up more and more, becoming more aware. And then I see that kind of shaping the energy of the universe itself. And so I think that we see kind of a bounce back between those two things, because really it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And when you look at more day-to-day things, like even the way our technology has advanced, we look at things like social media, podcasts, these kinds of things. I think, again, this is just another manifestation of how that energy is changing. We're once again, I think, realizing, and even albeit in technological ways, that we are all connected, that we are all we all share this experience, and we all are just part of this big thing. And again, whether I use the term higher consciousness, but it doesn't. That could be God for some people.
I was going to say that's a good question. Like growing up and things like that, is there some sort of like dogma in regards to the belief system that you had, that you were brought up in? Was it God? Was it something else that you called, or I think, was it more just Mother Earth and things like that?
I think we had a good appreciation for all of that. I think in terms of, a lot of people hear the word, God, and they immedially take that to an Abrahamic or a Judeo-Christian belief system, and that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think all of those all of those belief systems have value and truth in some sense. my personal, what my family, where I'm coming from, we didn't get so caught up with the labels and the things, we didn't have to, shape a belief or a system or a practice around like a higher figure. I think for us, it was more just the belief that there was some source of energy, and whether that was God, or goddess, because actually in my family, we tend to be more associated with divine feminine. So if we were to pray to a particular deity, usually it was a goddess rather than a god. But also beyond that, looking at things just in terms of appreciation of just connection with nature and the value of something like that, the energy that we see, and just a reverence for life and these kinds of things. I think these are the concepts that we really see. These are what are the good things that we get or receive from religion or spirituality. So taking it beyond that and having to say there's some higher father figure above us who watches us and observes all of our actions day to day. Never really felt a connection with that. And that was never really something that we really practiced or believed. Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about your own personal spiritual practice. How do you stay connected? What do you do? What are some of the ways that you kind of keep that connection with the
Well, I think just in personal practice, I make a point each day. If you want to kind of talk about just daily routine, I kind of make a point each day of making sure I get up. I try to do the right things. I first of all, I'm a big believer in taking care of physical body, and I'm kind of chunky, so I probably could improve my diet a little bit. But beyond that, though, I make sure I kind of eat the right things. I make sure I'm not putting too many chemicals into my body. Stay hydrated, these kinds of things. But beyond that, I look into, or the time that I spend each day, really, I make sure I meditate and I ground. I take a little bit of time each day just to make sure that I kind of find that center once again. And in the process of doing that, I don't really evoke a certain power or energy or entity to do that. I just kind of sit and I kind of check in with myself and make sure, do I feel okay? Am I in balance today? Am I in control of my emotion today? Am I feeling good about, what I need to do today? And if I'm not, maybe I'm not feeling good about what I anticipate is going to happen that day. And then I kind of, I kind of visit with that for just a few minutes and really kind of take or make an effort to really kind of see where that's coming from, where that might be coming from. But beyond that though, I'm a big believer in, we need to do the work that we do. We need to make sure that we have a good ground and that we are, sitting in a position of kind of energetic integrity. We need to not be bringing our stuff to the work that we're doing for other people.
Did you ever struggle with that?
There have been a couple of times over the years where I've had, and it's been unfortunate, and I've had a couple of clients, people who have come to see me for help. I've had to tell them, after a session, like, I don't really feel you got as much benefit from this today, and it's not because of something that you did or didn't do. It was me. So I want you to come back and see me, and we'll call it good, but I need you to come back and see me and give me a chance to really do this better for you. But and that was like early on. I've gotten to the point now where if I find that I'm going to go into a situation, for some reason I'm not feeling that balance, I'm feeling not quite so right about what's going on. And again, usually it's me, it's something going on with me in my personal life. I'm stressed, I'm tired, I'm not feeling well, whatever it may be. I really, at that point, I take a few minutes and I just kind of clear and ground, because again, I can't heal someone else. I can't bring someone else good stuff if I'm sitting in a position of bad stuff. And so that would be a big part of like just daily spiritual practice for me, just to make sure that I'm as good as I can be, that I'm as tuned up as I can be, to be in a good position to go out and really do this work for other people.
One of the cool things for me personally, when I started working with people and things like that, I found that, because like you said, it is really important, I think, to kind of keep your own stuff out of it and just be there for that person. And you do have to keep yourself grounded and you do have to keep yourself in that good space. But I would find that the more I worked with people, it was mutually beneficial a lot of times, where I would be getting, whether, it was information or insight or whatever we were working through that day with that client, was very much about them and their experience, because it resonated immensely with them. But yet there was copious amounts of information that I would glean from it as well. and I would take that back and incorporate it into where I was in life or what experience I was going through. Have you found that same kind of thing?
Absolutely. I say this quite often to people when I'm working with people, but my big belief is that we're all really kind of just mirrors for each other. In some sense, and the people that will come and see me for help, but they are coming to me for a reason, and it's usually it's not just about them. It's about me too, and I can relate several experiences over the years where someone has come to me and in the process of doing the work that I needed to do for them, I've walked away and I've somehow been made more whole. Also, I have gotten something I've needed. They were able to shine some light on something that was not going so well in my life at that point either, and it definitely gives you something. You are always, you were just as much a student as you are a teacher in this kind of work, I think. Yeah,
that's always the cool part for me. Like for me, that's the energy exchange. That's the thing that takes place. If we functioned in some sort of realm where we didn't have to worry about money or material things, that exchange is more than enough for me. Do you know what I mean? I love sitting down and getting that mutually beneficial good stuff.
Yep, exactly.
Let's talk about, because you've been in the field a lot longer than I have. You've been doing this a lot longer, and we're not going to get too negative by any means, but I want to talk about some of the downsides to energy work or some of the things that you'll see, because I want to bring awareness to this whole thing for people, right? I want people to be able to learn about it and have insight about it. But what are some of the things that you've seen over the years that you would advise people to kind of steer clear of or to be aware of? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
charlatans.
Yeah, I was just going to say charlatans. Yeah. I find that, well, there's this optimistic side of me that would like to hope that that's something that is happening less and less, but I'm not entirely sure that's true. And I, even within the last couple of years, have run into some people who have claimed to be doing this kind of work, and then have found out, through, things that have been related to me by people that have gone to them for help, and just personal interactions. I've seen that these people, they're not really operating from a place where they're like, their intention is really not to help. They proclaim they are something or someone, or that they can provide this for you, or they have this skill or this ability, and at the end of the day, there really is no benefit to really what they're doing. And a lot of it, it's unfortunate because there are a lot of these people out there who really, on some level, I think actually have some pretty strong ability, but they get so caught up with the ego trip, and the money that potentially can come when you reach a certain level of success and notoriety with the kind of work that we do. And they lose their way in a sense. But then there are just other people out there also who just kind of, they kind of hang up a sign and they say, this is what I do. And, and it's unfortunate because that happens, I think, in any industry. And I kind of tell people, one of the things I always tell people is to really kind of trust your instincts when you're working with somebody, anybody, whether it is the doctor at the hospital that you decide you want to work with, or, the person fixing your car, or, the person who's going to read your cards, whoever it is. I really tell people to take just a minute before you really sit down at the table with that person and really just kind of just check in with yourself. Like, does this person feel right?
Yeah. Does
this person feel like they're going to do what I need them to do, or give me what I need? And then to pay attention to that and honor that. And then if you get a bad feeling, to move on, because there's always somebody else who can do that for you. That's one way that you can avoid that. Other than that, I would really just say just to do some research, check these people out. You meet somebody, you become familiar with somebody, get online, do some Google, and whatever you need to do, figure out who you're really working with before you trust somebody, particularly when it comes to energy work, because there are people out there who can do some pretty unfortunate things. I've seen some stuff over the years where people have been legitimately hurt by somebody who has not been who they have claimed to be. And they have caused more damage than good. So do your research, I would say, really would be kind of the caveat there.
Let me ask you this. So I'm assuming that you probably work on yourself in a sense, do you read your own cards? Do you do any sort of energy work on yourself, or is it more or less just your connection that you kind of not take for granted, but use as your source of healing for yourself?
Yeah, I take for granted might actually be a good way to put it. In terms of energy work, I absolutely, I will do energy work on myself, because I think that is, I really, I think, truth be told, I think anybody really can access a power like that. I think we all have connection in some sense to that. So energy work, absolutely. Other stuff that I do in terms of like some of the card reading and some of the other, the divinatory, the oracular work. I don't really do that for myself. I learned really early on that it's not really a good idea to do that for yourself. We lack the ability to be objective sometimes. Sometimes it's just too difficult to look beyond what we want or where our limitations are at that particular moment in time to really be able to see clearly. So I do not read for myself. Which is
go see other people?
I do. Yeah, I'm fortunate enough. Like I said, with my family, I'm fortunate enough. I always have somebody else who's available to do this. But over the years, I've met several other practitioners who I also have. I'll make an appointment. I'll go. And it's kind of cool. It works out really well because usually we trade work, they'll give me a reading or I'll go to them for energy work and then they come and see me for something, and we're able to benefit each other in that way. So no, I don't really do that for myself so much and for those reasons. Yeah.
Because it is hard sometimes. Yeah. It is hard sometimes to get out of your head.
That would be one of the other downsides, I guess, to doing this kind of work is it's kind of like most of the time we're open vessels or we're open channels for this, but not so much for us, only for other people. I mean, it would be really nice sometimes to be able to kind of like draw my own cards and say like, oh, this is, I need to go buy a lottery ticket and these need to be my numbers, you know, and do that kind of stuff. And it just, unfortunately, I think more often than not doesn't really work that way. So that would maybe be another downside to what we do.
Like, what's your inspiration? Like, where do you get is it merely information that you glean through meditation or through your intuition or through your connection? Like, how do you find guidance in your life? Where does that come from?
Well, I'm pretty direct. I think in terms of what I mean by direct, I guess is I'm pretty simple, and I usually operate more, with like straight line kind of mindset. I maybe tend to be a little more analytical with the way I look at things, but in terms of how I find my motivation or my inspiration for things, I kind of just, I take a look at what I anticipate or what I perceive to be the current obstacle or challenge or opportunity in my life. And I will sit and I will actually just kind of have a conversation with myself and just kind of open that up to the universe or God or whoever may be listening. There are usually lots of people listening. And then I kind of wait to see what comes. And it's interesting because though it always begins as an analytical thought process, I find that the answers that I get actually come in completely non-logical, non-analytical kinds of ways.
Like what?
So I'm a big believer in paying attention to what my body tells me. And I actually counsel people a lot. I tell people a lot to really kind of base psychic perception and confirmation in terms of getting answers that they need or feelings that they might need to receive. I really counsel people a lot to really pay attention to physical body. I think our physical body is programmed to really kind of give us the information that we need depending on the circumstances. Yeah. So I will throw something out there and then I will kind of pay attention to the sensation I get in my body. And that may also just be one way that some of my personal guides work with me. They'll usually give me like a tap on the shoulder or they'll make sure I see a certain sign, these kinds of things. Usually it's more of a physical manifestation in terms of answers I will receive. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, that might just be again, kind of how I work, but I see some similarities in some of the work done by a lot of the other practitioners that I'm familiar with. Yeah.
It's interesting. And this is one thing too, that I've met a ton of different people who have a ton of different modalities and everybody's doing, when I say their own spin, it's not by any means minimizing it, but they've taken whatever it is that they've taken and made it their own. And now they're using that. Yeah. But it seems like, because I've gone through and I've gotten a lot of readings or I've had sessions with people and things like that, even before I started to do this stuff. And in the end, it was like, I felt like everybody was doing the same thing, just in their own way. Like everybody's accessing that same energy. They're just working with it in their own way. And so the way I've always viewed it and thought about it is we have these tools that we use. Some people use cards as tools. Some people would use a palm as a tool, and it's just that tool that they're using to access that same flow of energy. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. And I think we're all so different and so wonderfully complex, that I think, any source of energy is going to flow through each of us differently. We're also such individuals. We're all going to manifest and shape things in a different way.
Yeah.
So I think that would maybe make sense. You see a lot of people out there who same modality, but you see it come through in a slightly different way, and that would be it. It's really that individual person's connection to spirit and how that moves through them, I think. Yeah.
Do you think that everybody as a whole has that connection?
That's kind of a loaded question. I was going to say, and one that I think you and I, like people who do the work, I think we kind of get that asked often enough. We have lots of opportunity to really kind of think about that. I think that my answer to that would have to be, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I can't sit here and I can't say that everybody out there has that same connection. What I mean by that, or I guess maybe to clarify that, is I'm not saying that I don't think everybody could have that. But I'll admit that you can't just go out and buy a deck of tarot cards and throw them out on a table and say, I'm a card reader now. You just can't do that. You can't decide, I'm going to hold my hands over this person's head and their headache's going to go away. You just, in a perfect world, that would be how that would happen. Yeah. But the difference, I think, is that it takes work. You actually have to practice and study and work and learn. You have to go through the discipline to really learn some of these things. And that really is what makes that happen for you. Mm-hmm. So it's not that everybody couldn't have that same kind of connection. It's that there are people out there that I think that maybe are more in connection because they've really done the work. Yeah. They've bothered to really learn these things. And those are the people that ideally you want to seek out, the people that you want to work with. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think happens when we die?
Ooh, I think that my personal belief on that is I think that the concept of death, and for me, I guess, and this is not just personal belief, but also based on my own spiritual tradition, is that death is really just another doorway. That's all that really is. Uh-huh. You call that maybe like another threshold, another jumping off point, whatever you want to call it. But I think that we as a culture, we kind of have this view of death as being something that is very it's very final, and that's it. And there is a lot of fear that comes up in people around that, and I don't think any of that really is really necessary. I don't think any of that really needs to exist, because again, I think that death is really just the beginning of something else. Yeah. And a lot of people, my views might tend more to follow along the lines of reincarnation, these kinds of things. But even then, I'm not entirely decided on that. I guess maybe I would be more agnostic in my views on death and what may come after that in terms of afterlife. I think I've had enough experiences, and over the years, I've been fortunate enough to connect with enough, with souls and even through some of the shamanic work, some ancestral spirits and things that have come through, not just mine, but other people's, that I've been able to communicate with. And I've gotten to the point where I really kind of believe we really kind of get what we expect when we die. Yeah. Good or bad. I've had some experiences over the years where some souls have come through and they've communicated they're maybe not in such a very good place. Mm-hmm. But I think you find, if you research, you go back and you explore, where that soul came from or where they were prior to getting to that point. Usually they were in a situation where they kind of anticipated they were going to maybe be in a place with some suffering and some darkness. And other souls who, people who are just, they just embrace that light so much, and they're just looking so forward to that next good thing, that next level, whatever it is. They move on, and that's what they find. They get to a place where there's just a lot of light and happiness. And so I think we really do kind of get what we want. And I think that,
kind of get what we create.
Yeah. That's really, I think, and really that's the way life really kind of works too. Before we even get to that point, we're living day to day, and really the perception, our expectation and what we're putting out there, really we create that experience for ourselves. So why not have it work the same way with death?
I was going to say that makes sense.
Yeah. All this deep flowing conversation.
Yeah.
And my tangential discussions on everything.
I like to challenge my beliefs. So through my connection to the universe and through meditation and everything that you know what I mean? Through that strong basis, I feel like I get a really firm place of, this is what I believe. This is what my faith is kind of rooted in. And then I like to challenge those things. I like to look at them from different perspectives and things like that. Do you do the same thing, or have you ever kind of looked at it that way where...
I do. I think it's, well, and whatever your personal purpose is for doing that, I think, if you want to call it, the desire to continue to grow in some way, or maybe some people are just by their nature a little more skeptical of things. I think that it's important to do that, and I do look for ways that I can do that. And for me, a big way to do that is to really just kind of put myself in situations where I have to face some sort of a challenge in a different way. I have to kind of put aside my skill set and really just kind of embrace whatever comes, and hopefully develop a new strength. So I think it's important to do that. And really, that's really doing something like that, going through a process like that is really the only way that I think we really can continue to grow. And it's really important to do that. I mean, life is just change and growth and transformation. And we get to the point where we stop questioning. We just kind of accept where we're at, and this is what it is, and this is always will what be right, or what will be right, and this is what's absolutely true. Then we kind of shut ourselves down. We kind of take ourselves out of that process. We stagnate. It's not a good thing.
Can you think of anything that has changed over the years, where maybe you had something, even recently, something that you felt very strongly about, very committed to this idea or this concept, and then it shifted and changed, and you have a new belief system based around it?
I don't know. Well, I don't know if I could really identify a new belief system. I think maybe, if I could touch back on some of what I was saying just a moment ago, we were talking about death. I think I grew up in a household where there was this belief that it's almost like a Christian mindset, which is odd because we never really identified as being Christian, but this belief that if you did the right things and you were a good person, that you would only ever see good and right come to you, and then obviously in the reverse, if you were bad and you did your best to make sure life was painful and difficult for those around you, that would be what you would see. And I think that going through life with that kind of a dogmatic kind of view of things, that kind of like that strict kind of sense of right and wrong, I think is something that I've really kind of learned doesn't really work in the real world, and particularly with spiritual stuff either. So I think if I were to look at where I'm at right now, that would be maybe one thing that I've seen change, just through experiences that I've had, through the work that I've done, through just observing, interacting with people in different levels of grief, whatever they're going through, even on a personal level, dealing with some of my own stuff and some of the work I've had to do over the years to get to where I'm at today. I've realized that there really is there are no rules. There are, everything. I think things are a little more fluid and a little more open than we might like them to be. But I think in a sense that's also kind of a good thing. Yeah.
One of the things too that I wanted to address when it comes to all of this stuff, I think a lot of times people, you and I or other people that we know, they'll get labeled with some sort of stereotype. And what do you find? Because I think that was the cool thing, that after I met so many different people, was the realization of these are just normal people. Do you know what I mean? There's absolutely nothing different from any of us really, but we're all different, but what do you like? What's a stereotype that you feel like you get stuck with and you get labeled with? And then kind of the counterpoint where, tell me some things about just like, this is normal Michael. Like, Michael's not just Shavano, he's...
Well, I mean, in terms of stereotypes that I have to deal with the work that we do, well, I don't know. I think a lot of us have to deal with the stereotype of being like the... I'm just trying to think, like, over the years, things I've personally, like, I had to really get over the idea or the concept of being like the hippie, like the hippie spiritualist, the guy in tie-dye and Birkenstocks who, just wants everything to be about peace and love. And there's nothing wrong with that. I wear Birkenstocks. But so that would maybe be one thing, one perception that I think a lot of people might have of me, and really not just me, but of other people who are kind of in our industry, people who do our work. That and then again, if I maybe kind of touch back on something that we discussed earlier, the charlatan, the image of somebody who really is like the con man, somebody who's really out to just kind of take advantage, and deliberately lie and hurt people to try to gain in some way. I guess I'm lucky because I haven't really had to deal with a lot of stereotypical, like, oh, this is who you are, or this is what you're about. I haven't really seen much of that. And I don't know, like I said, I have to say I'm lucky for that, because I know a lot of other people who have been through some stuff where they've had to really fight some of that, those labels and those images that people have, those perceptions that people have. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's another symptom or another sign of maybe just how I was raised. I think that I kind of got comfortable with being kind of on the outside of things to some extent. That I just I'm not fazed as much maybe by those things. I don't know.
Yeah. What do you feel like is like what's normal? Not normal for you, but like, what do you feel like? I mean, you're just a regular guy. Do you know what I mean? What do you do that is just a regular guy thing where you're not sitting around reading palms all day long?
I do the same stuff everybody else does. I get up and, I have to clean my house, and I have animals that I share my home with that I have to make sure are fed and watered, and I water my house plants, and I have to balance my checkbook, and, I pay those bills, and, I get out and I have to drive to get around just like everybody else, and I go and I on my odd day off, I probably watch way more Netflix than anybody ever needs to watch.
What's your favorite show on Netflix right now?
Right now? Oh geez, you'd have to ask me that. Oh geez. I just finished, I think it's The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yes.
I think that's the series. I think I just finished the second season of that.
That's a pretty good show.
So yeah, I love that. Anything Tina Fey does, I'm all about. Yeah. She's just hysterical. But, yeah. I'm married, I spend time with my husband, and life is really boring, actually. Now I'm thinking about the day-to-day details. It's just so mundane. But that's pretty much it. So, in terms of, I think that's fun. You asked that because I'm sure there are people out there who think like, this is what we're all about. When we, at the end of the day, we wrap ourselves up in our capes and we fly home to our wizard's towers, and we
go to bed on a bed of crystals.
Yes, exactly.
And wake up and smudge yourself before stepping into a shower of white light.
Exactly.
And,
that's life. Yeah. I'm sure there are people out there who sometimes wonder what we get up to in the privacy of our homes, but that's usually it. Usually it's, same old stuff that everybody else really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're teaching some classes too, right? I saw some of that pop up on Facebook. Tell me about that.
Yeah. I taught classes a long time ago. Even years ago, even like prior to the hiatus that I took in my 20s, I taught some classes, and I'm kind of dusting some of those off now because I've noticed that we can really use some of that stuff here in this area. So my next class coming up is going to be just an introductory class to palm reading. In the time that I've been reading palm reading here in Salt Lake City and kind of the surrounding areas, I've just had so many people just approach me, like, because there just doesn't seem to be anybody else out there who really is doing that. And I know,
I don't know if I've seen anybody that's doing that besides you.
I'm familiar with, like, there are like 2 or 3 other practitioners between, like, I want to say between Salt Lake City and Ogden, roughly, who also read palms. But I'm not really too closely, I know I'm too familiar with them. So there are other people out there that do it, but in terms of being able to kind of like teach people how this works, like what this is, cause I'm a big believer in just educating people, just kind of sharing that knowledge. I think that, there's a certain mystery around a lot of what we do, and where we learn to do these things. And I think that, it's good for us to kind of turn that around and show people like this is the history of this, and this is where this came from, and this is how I learned this, and this is how this works, and if you want to, you can learn to do this too. And share that. And I think the big part of me, or one of the big reasons I think there's a value in doing that, is it's another way for us to show people that we're real. Because a lot of people think that this is all just a bunch of hooey, and like there's this is, again, we're just a bunch of people out there trying to con, and if we can give people like the history, the roots, the background, like this is what this is, this is where this modality came from and how you use it. It's another way to kind of show people like this is real, like there's truth to this. And so I'm teaching the class on palmistry basically. And again, it's just kind of an introductory class just to give people some of the basics on, the layout of the hand, reading lines, the mounts, the fingers, these kinds of things, just all the different aspects of the palm, the hand. And, with the idea of giving them just kind of a taste of how that works, to see if maybe there's somebody sitting in that crowd who decides they want to go further. Maybe they want to become the next palm reader.
Yeah. And where's that class being held?
That class is going to be held on June 13th at Crone's Hollow. Crone's Hollow is this cool little pagan.
They just moved, didn't they? Did they get a new building?
They're moving within the next week and a half.
Cool.
Yeah. And their website will be updated, I think, with all the new address information here pretty soon. Yeah, I work for them. I'm in there every week as one of their house readers also. So I'm in there and I read cards every Monday for people who come in, cards and palms and whatever else they might want.
And you're there on Mondays?
I'm in there Mondays every week. And I'll be teaching the palm reading class there on the 13th of June. And they will be in their new location at that point. I think it's like the first class in their new location. So,
that's
everybody's,
cool.
Everybody's pretty excited about that. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. It was one of those, I looked at, this is something that I do. So many people have an interest in this. I wanted to be able to kind of share that information and get that out there.
That's very cool. Yeah. So where can they get more info about you?
So, they can find me. Social media is real big, and I usually tell people just to find me on Facebook, but they can find me on Facebook at Shuvano Michael and Mandala Metaphysical Arts. They can also see me on my website. The website is manmetart.wix.com. And, they can always contact me to find out more about me, questions on services, these kinds of things. They can send me an email at mandalameta.arts@gmail.com, or they can call me 801-864-7870.
Cool. Well, we'll make sure and have all that posted up on our Facebook page and everything. So when the episode goes live, people can find you through that as well. But I think we've covered quite a bit, man. Can you think of anything else you want to talk about?
I really can't. We've been pretty in depth today. Yeah, and I just want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this. This is excellent.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you. That's all illusion. We wrap ourselves up in our capes and we fly home to our wizard's towers and. This is your destiny.